Welcome to the Chaos and Light podcast. I am your host, Angela Levesque. Today will also be a solo episode due to some issues outside of my control. So next week we will have Andrew Martin, as promised, up talking about karma and the nature of good and evil. It was a really interesting conversation, so I'm excited to share that with you. Today we are going to talk about a topic that I think I embody quite well: adult play. Sometimes when things get a little bit heavy, I get the message to lighten up, invite more fun, more laughter, more joy into my life. And so I've had some interesting things show up in my space, reminding me that that I operate my best when I'm moving from a place of lightness and playfulness. So I thought I would do a whole episode on this. Before we get going on that, I just want to remind my listeners that the Chaos and Light podcast is part of the Chaos and Light community. And if you haven't checked it out, go to chaosandlight.com. We have a ton of fantastic events coming up. So go to chaosandlight.com/events and you can find out more information about our intention series, our living light meditation. Andrew Martin has group sphere healing, as well as energy field mapping, which is an event I'm very excited about. And that's using art and creativity and play. And in fact, it was our conversations in the community around this idea of energy field mapping that led not only to this podcast, but also that event, because you're really drawing on your own inner creativity and connecting to sacred geometry and playing with colored pencils and protractors and all sorts of fun things. And Andrew had been sharing his progress of these beautiful things that he's been creating. And I said, wouldn't that be a fun event? And lo and behold, it is now an event, and it is also the inspiration for this podcast. So yes, do check that out. Well, we're going to start today, as we usually do, with the divine spectacle, where it's not you and me, it's me and we, moving from the understanding that we are all connected. Well, I want to start by dissecting the idea of play. And when I usually do these solo podcasts, I do quite a bit of research and I dig into a lot of my books and my philosophy textbooks and all of those sorts of things. So I thought, I wonder what are the prevailing thoughts on play? And there, in fact, is a journal that's designed for play. But I kind of thought as I was reading it, it was sort of the antithesis of trying to categorize and, really delineate the different components of play and all of that. It, like I said, it seemed like the antithesis of what play actually is, which is an activity engaged in for just pure enjoyment. So it is spontaneous, it's light, it's free, it's unstructured. Of course, there's aspects of play that you can look at just with, physical activity. You can go out and do some gardening, or you can play, a soccer game, and that's far more structured. So of course that there is play that is structured, but when we think about it, as we use children as our guides for this, it really is sort of this collective cohesive intelligence. You get kids, they come together, they may or may not lay down some ground rules, but they come together and it's just about creativity and innovation and really being in the moment. So I love this idea of introducing more play, as especially for adults, because we spend so much of our time in activities that are geared towards the outcome and what can we produce and what is the purpose of spending this time and all of those things. And play is really, it unleashes parts of ourselves that I think often are malnourished in our reasoned, linear, logical world. So anytime that we can take a step back from that and engage in this unstructured way that is undertaken from this place, like it's enjoyment for the sake of enjoyment. It's laughter and humor for the sake of laughter. It's just taking time to kind of live on the opposite side of the spectrum for a little while. So in order to understand this, let's talk a little bit about the emotions of play. So of course, joy and pleasure, curiosity is a really big one, anticipation, spontaneity. But pulling all these together, there's something kind of unique about play, is that it's a co-creative, it's present moment, and it really brings the person playing, whether that's in a group or especially adult play can happen by ourselves, into this flow state. And our flow state is really merging action and awareness. And what happens, and they've done brain studies and they've looked at this, is that our sense of self and our sense of self-consciousness totally disappear when we're in our flow states. And you look at that with children, right? Like if they're sitting down and they're playing Lego, they're totally immersed in the moment, and they're not thinking about me relative to you, or who am I in this moment, and am I representing myself in the right manner? No, they're just concerned about playing. So a big part of play is also about this creativity and the creative process, and like I mentioned, the flow state, which really, when you get down to it, that idea of action and awareness merge, what's really happening is sort of a quieting of our inner critic, or our prefrontal cortex, that really stores our sense of self and identity and all of those things. So as a result, as we quiet our prefrontal cortex, we are far less critical of ourselves. And when we think about, like, where do we lose play? And I'm watching this right now with my son as he's 13. And of course, he plays in a different way with his friends now. But as he's starting to assert himself and figure out who he is and how what roles he plays in this world, again, this idea of self-consciousness. And I think that as we move, as we develop from these places of being, small children, into kind of asserting who we are in this world, that idea of play starts to become immature. And then we take this on into adulthood, and we say, I can't let loose. I can't be silly. I have to keep things more structured and rigid, and I need to focus on how I can contribute and what my outcomes are, and all of those things. And so as part of that, our inner critic becomes louder and louder and louder. So how do we move back into this place of play as a state of being? And there's a few aspects of mindfulness that we can draw on. This idea of non-attachment, this idea of impermanence, that we're here just for this moment. We can enjoy this moment as much as possible. And the way we do that is by bringing our full self into the room. I love it. That I took that from Andrew Martin. He talks about having our full self in the room. And that's an important aspect of play, is understanding that we're just there. So whether it's, an impromptu, flying a kite in a park or playing Frisbee or something, that we're bringing our full presence into that moment, knowing that, it's just for whatever time it is, for whatever period of time, and being non-attached to that. So finding ways to be in nature, exploring the world from different lenses, singing and dancing for no reason, being silly without judgment, childlike, full of wonder and curiosity, all of those things is more how we adopt play as a state of being. And we'll dive deeper into this in the Sacred Mind segment. So one of the big pieces of moving into play as a state of being is seeing the value in being the adult beginner. So I love the famous quote, "If your mind is empty, it is always open to anything. It is open to everything. To the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few." And again, this speaks to, as we get older, we become more rigid. And there's a certain amount of rigidity that comes along with giving our inner critic too much say in our actions. And children just don't have that same level of inner critic. And they're able to be far more flexible in the way that they act. And of course, there's real life reasons for that. They don't have jobs, and they don't have to pay bills, and they don't have all the life stressors that we have. But there's part of this, again, that goes along with our self-concept and our self-consciousness, that we want to show that we are mature adults, and that our actions are predictable, and there's a certain level of reliability that goes along with that. And so all of those things are very important, right? You still got to pay your bills. You still need to be accountable for your choices and show up when you're supposed to show up, all of those things. But when we talk about play as a state of mind, are there ways to do and engage in those activities without it being so heavy? And so the adult beginner moves into things without the expectation of knowledge, without already saying, I know all about this. I know how it works. I know what needs to be said, what needs to be done, because all of that level of certainty leads to that rigidity that I was talking about, leads to us being very inflexible. And so a piece of the adult beginner is literally also just trying things as an adult where you're a beginner. And this helps us move into that place of the beginner's mind. So I've talked about this before, but being an adult beginner skier and having to take ski lessons with, other like teens and children that were beginners, and learning like the pizza and the French fry and all of this. Those are different ways that you have your skis open, and then in snowplow is the pizza. So going back and starting something totally new and learning it, whether it's like pottery, or I took a pottery class with my son, and I'd never ever done pottery in my life using a potter's wheel, and the crappy things that I created out of that class. But it wasn't about the product. It was about the experience. And being an adult beginner, a literal adult beginner in trying new activities, is a fantastic way to start to, it's a portal or sort of a gateway into this idea of play as a state of mind. So I encourage you, if you're having a hard time with your inner critic, if you're having a hard time with being too rigid and inflexible, and maybe you feel like your creativity is being stifled, sign up for something that you've never done before and enjoy the process of challenging that inner critic, but also enjoy the process of just being curious. Because when you don't already know how things are done, you kind of are forced to go into that place of the beginner's mind. And as you kind of use that as your gateway, you realize how fun it is to invite more lightness and playfulness and spontaneity and all of those beautiful things, curiosity, wonder, awe, joy, laughter, all of those things, how exciting it is to invite those into your life. And the last thing I want to say here in this segment is, and this is one of the things too that kind of prompted me to do this segment, is working with the inner child. So Caroline Myss would say that we all embody some version of the inner child archetype. So the last time that I did an inner child meditation, which you can find on chaosandlight.com. I had my little girl showing up, and she was like making rainbows as she's flying through a meadow, and she's reminding me to be more light, to be more playful, to invite more joy into my life. And so a lot of our inner child work can be negotiated through play, through giving our inner child the opportunity for that lightness and the playfulness and the creativity and the innovation. And, there's other dark, heavy inner child work that might need to be done as well. But inviting that play into your life, having that playful state of mind and state of being can go a long way in giving the nourishment and nurturing that your inner child is looking for. Well, when we get back, I'm going to give you a plethora of examples of what child play looks like and some of the main benefits to our mental, social, emotional, and energetic planes of being. We'll be right back in just a minute. Do you believe in synchronicity and synergy? That when people share, connect, and collaborate from an authentic space, amazing things can and do happen? Then check out the Chaos and Light community, an online space for spiritual seekers that supports personal growth and gives you a frequent touch point to stay connected to your spiritual core. Join a group, attend a gathering, be inspired by our Muse feed, all in a politics-free, ad-free environment. So dive deep into your spirituality at chaosandlight.com. Connect, inspire, expand. All right. Well, we are here now in the Sacred Mind segment, and we are going to talk about the benefits and give a lot of different ideas on what adult play looks like. So play, thank goodness there are journals dedicated, academic journals dedicated to play that have studied this. It was funny as I was trying to do research too, I came across lots of articles that were like, make sure you schedule play and write down ideas of what you'll do during that time. And it was like a whole bunch of like kind of masculine order-oriented ways to structure play in your life. And I just thought, that doesn't quite seem like it's, on the mark there. So anyway, but because people have studied this, we know that play is actually a biological imperative. Meaning if you've watched any small mammals in your life, whether it's kittens or puppies, I used to live in this place where there were deer across the way, and you would see the little fawns like running around and butting each other, and you could just tell that they were playing. And so it doesn't matter, where you are kind of on the spectrum of mammals. In general, they play. So it seems to be part of us on a very primitive level. And so they've looked that they found the play centers are actually in the oldest parts of our brain, which tells us on some level there's sort of a biological necessity for all of mammal development. And and it has continued to, it hasn't been pruned as our brains have evolved and developed. So it's really, really important. And it's not only important for child development, but it also has a lot of benefits for adults as well. So let's talk about some of those benefits. Well, it helps us stave off mental decline. There's a lot of cognitive benefits, improves brain function. It helps us dive into our creativity and spurs innovation. They've done so many studies with children where, they'll give children a problem and the children can come up with an amazing amount of solutions, maybe not the most practical. And then they'll ask the same of the adults and they can come up with one or two things. So there's a piece of this, again, the play is a state of mind that if we can invite that state into ourselves and we can quiet the inner critic and the prefrontal activation and really just move into these flow states, there's so many possibilities for innovation and problem solving and looking at things from different points of view. And even if you think of it in the most literal sense, like children will be down on the floor and then they're up on the bed, and then they are literally looking at the world from a lot of different vantage points. And we usually look at the world either sitting or standing, right? So there's just a lot of cognitive benefits to play as an adult. Because even, if we think about the different mood states that happen, like joy and awe and curiosity and all of those things are really valuable to invite into our lives. Like it's impossible to not feel an increased sense of lightness when we're having more laughter and joy and curiosity into our life. There's also a lot of social benefits too, especially obviously we're going to talk, there's play that you can do solo, but play with other people helps us develop a sense of intimacy and vulnerability with other people. Like if you can be silly around the people that in your life that you can be silly with, those are good people to keep around. It means that you've moved past that inner critic with them, that you're okay being vulnerable, you're okay with being seen, maybe in randomness and disarray. So you build trust and intimacy, and you foster empathy, and really it just helps loosen, those social situations. They talk about icebreakers, right? With people that you've never met. Well, there's value even among strangers to be a little bit silly, because then everybody kind of drops their guard a little bit and opens up. And so it really can break down some of those barriers. There's also a ton of physiological benefits. Play releases endorphins, which are those natural feel-good chemicals that we have. And those generally, overall, they increase our sense of well-being and positivity and optimism, all of those things. George Bernard Shaw said, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." And it boosts our energy. It helps us feel young. Again, it reminds us of a time. It takes us back to a time when we took ourselves so much less serious. If we can go back to that sense of freedom that we had as children, and we can invite that into our lives, even when we still have to pay our bills and get shit done in our lives. So it really helps us boost our energy and our vitality. It burns more calories. And it's so funny that when we think about exercise and everything is sets and reps, and let's do these same movements with our body over and over, repetition. And of course, there's value in that. And of course, if you're training for something, that's absolutely necessary. But I even noticed I've been going for runs more lately, and I haven't done that for a while. And even just running, just moving my body in a different way. I've been doing a lot of long walks with my friend, which is fabulous. She is this beautiful little girl, and I get to play with her all the time, and she just lights up my life. It's awesome. But I did notice that not having run, even just using my body in a different way, provided me with a sense of lightness. So moving away from the structure and regimented activity, and, going sledding or, walking by a park and going on the swings. I mean, sometimes that's going to be frowned upon, but if you're with little kids, you can totally get away with it. So other ways, especially diving into your creativity, whether it's doodling or collaging or painting or coloring, any opportunity when I'm around my friends' children that I have to color, I absolutely will do it, because I just love to color, and I'm actually not that good at it. I'm still working on staying in between the lines, but I just enjoy the activity of that. Again, it takes me into a flow state. Dancing, kitchen dancing is one of my most favorite activities. Putting on some Hot Chip. If you've never checked out Hot Chip, you should, because they will make you want to dance. And dancing in your kitchen and singing. My husband always makes fun of me. He's like, you're always humming while you cook. And I'm like, yeah, that's because I'm really enjoying myself. And, and then there's more like structured stuff like playing games. I love playing games like board games and stuff. Bowling, seeing karaoke, or as they say in America, karaoke, which is not the correct pronunciation, which I know now because of living in in Japan. Like I said, impromptu days at the beach. I love swimming and camping and, paddleboarding and anything, that you think is enjoyable to you. Doing it for the sake of enjoyment. Surrounding yourself with people that are also playful, that are willing to look like a fool for the sake of fun. These are really important things. Do you have people in your life who can let their inner critic, fall by the wayside for a while and just be silly? I hope that you do, because those people bring a tremendous amount of value to your life. And if you don't have people like that, watch a really good comedy. Listen to some stand-up comedians. Find ways to laugh. Laughing yoga is quite hilarious. Be silly. Play with kids. Play with puppies. Find partners in crime that will go out and just do unstructured activity. Another thing that my friend and I do when we walk with her girl is just walk anywhere. Like, where do we feel? Oh, we feel like going right? Let's go right. And then we'll find little cute streets. We'll say, let's walk down there. And we just really, again, just unstructured. We just go where, we feel led. And that's a really beautiful thing. So I hope you have either children or babies or puppies, cats, they'll play, but they're a little bit more picky. But dogs for sure are awesome for play. Just finding any opportunity, you don't need a reason. That's the whole point of it, to engage in stuff that brings out those emotions of joy and laughter and curiosity and wonder. Well, I hope I gave you some good ideas, and we will be back in just a moment with It's Worth Your Time. Are you enjoying this podcast and want to help this lady out? Well, share it with friends, or even better, leave a review on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you. Now back to the show. Okay, so welcome to It's Worth Your Time segment. I recently, actually as recently as last night, I watched a Netflix documentary called Minimalist, Less Is Now. And I thought this was a really good suggestion, because I think the less stuff we have in our life, the easier it is to move into that state of play. Because all of that stuff that we have around us has energy, and we get courted to it, we get tied to it. And often when we have a lot of clutter in our house, it feels very heavy and dense. And so part of that play as a state of being is finding ways to lighten up. And one of the best ways that you can do that is getting rid of your crap. And then the second point of that is stop introducing so much stuff into your life. It's not the, from a production value standpoint, it was all right. It was not the most engaging documentary, but I thought the sentiment behind it was really, really important. And that is about, as we get rid of stuff, as we declutter, we have more space, literally, but energetically, to engage with what matters in our life. So if we only have stuff in our life that is meaningful to us, then everything then also, because we use those things, then there's that extension of meaning in the actions that we take. And again, the less stuff that we have to clutter our minds and clutter our bodies and clutter our energy fields, the easier it is to be more flexible in our life, to have that lightness, that state of play as a state of being. So I check it's, I think it's less than an hour. It's not a big investment of your time, but I think it has a really, really positive message, especially when we talk about play. So check it out. Minimalist, less is now. Well, that is the show for today. I will be back next week with Andrew Martin. Take care and seek the mystery.